Today, we are going to be previewing two brand new Marvel Champions cards coming to us in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. upcoming expansion. Both of these are going to be Maria Hill identity specific cards, and I am so excited to talk about them. The first one we're going to be talking about here is the 2-cost preparation called Life Model Decoy. This is a interrupt that says when an enemy attacks you, you can discard this card to prevent all damage from that attack. So I like the, take no damage. Now this isn't a defense card, so it's not going to work super great with like the perfect defense, but I like not taking damage. And so I am very excited about Life Model Decoy, but there are a couple of things I want to talk about. For the cost, 2 cost, which is effectively 3 cost because you play the card itself, in a lot of scenarios, I would probably prioritize playing an ally over this card if I had both of them in my hand. So if I'm looking at what's a 2-cost ally, Ironheart is probably a bad example because that's a really good one. But if I had Ironheart in my hand, I'm playing Ironheart over this card because Ironheart can thwart as well as block, which is effectively preventing all damage from the attack. So for the ally, you get the additional benefit of maybe a little bit of damage or a little bit of thwarting before you, quote, prevent all damage from the attack. That being said, there are a couple of advantages that this card offers over an ally. One, it does not take a ally slot. You're limited to 3, this one does not. This is also a upgrade. It is an identity specific upgrade, so it is superpower trainable, which I'm not sure if that's how you would say that, but it is a target for superpower training. And I am definitely going to be running superpower training in my Maria Hill decks for her upgrade shield director. So if we already have that on the table, say we draw it before we draw superpower training, this is going to be a nice backup option that we can thwart down and then kind of, take care of to get this out as a I'm safe, because it also serves as a panic button. What if you don't have an ally? If you have this card and you play it, maybe the villain is stunned, maybe you already have an answer for the incoming attack. You don't have to use it until you absolutely need to use it. So it can be a panic button. It can come in later. So if you're playing a Venom who has 9 boost cards stacked up on him because you've been pinging him all your last turn, panic button, prevent all damage, you're done. There you go. And finally, it can get around overkill damage. Though you do need to know and trigger this card before you're revealing boost cards, because the interrupt is when the enemy attacks. That is before you reveal any boost cards. But if you have a Juggernaut or somebody who has overkill and you're going up against them, you probably don't want to throw a 1 health Ironheart because that does not actually prevent a ton of damage from that villain attack. So it can get around the overkill damage as well. So it does have a little bit of flexibility against certain scenarios. All in all, I'm thinking that this card is a nice to have, but is not critical to her strategy, and I probably will not go out of my way to play this over an ally, except in specific circumstances. That being said, it's also a tech traded card, so it can be repurposed, and so that's also kind of fun. We can discard this, ready up, get +2 to our stats, and then kind of do all the things that repurpose wants to do. So we do have a tech card in Maria so that we can repurpose it. Second card that we're going to be talking about is the one I am most excited for, and that is All Points Bulletin. This is a 2-cost event that is uber flexible because when you play it, for every single shield support you control, you get to choose to either remove 1 threat from a scheme or deal 1 damage to an enemy. And these are independent instances of damage and or threat removal, so we can really get creative here, especially once we are built up and have a ton of shield supports on the table. It is not a thwart or an attack card, so it's going to get around guard. If you are statused, if you are confused, you can still play this and remove threats. So it's very flexible in that sense where you can apply this. But what is really crazy here is that this feeds off the playstyle Maria wants to be playing by having and manipulating shield supports, and there is no cap. There is no limit on the on how many of the times you can trigger this card. So she has cards like the Iliad and support staff in her kit that she wants on the table that will feed this card. Plus, she is able to bring off aspect shield supports based on her alter ego deck building ability. And because of her ability to manipulate counters on shield supports, she's going to want to be bringing lower cost supports to the table, like maybe a field agent, to feed the larger helicarriers, which we saw in the preview article, to ramp those up, because I'd much rather use a all-purpose counter from a field agent to feed the Iliad. So I'm going to be playing the 1-cost field agent to get counters onto the Iliad, but having that field agent on the table is going to be another instance of threat removal or damage. And so with all of those lower cost shield supports, this can ramp the efficiency pretty quickly for the all points bulletin. Just in basic, let's just think about the basic cards. Maria is probably going to be one of bringing like the OG helicarrier to the table in a lot of her builds. Government liaison to discount her shield supports that she is going to be playing. Sky Destroyer because she's playing a ton of shield cards. So right there, that's 3 already. And we'll talk about the math here in a second, but we're very close to getting over efficiency at that point. What I'm trying to say here, there are a lot of shield supports in the game, and Maria wants to include pretty much all of them in her deck. Let's do some math. For 3 effective cost, 2 cost plus the card itself, if we just look at threat, we typically would like to see around 4 threat removal for this cost, and for damage, we'd like to see 5 to 6 damage, which is a lot of supports out there. 6 supports is a lot of supports in order to get to the efficiency curve that we would like to see out of this card. That being said, this does not consider the flexibility that it provides. Since we can split up the instances, it gets more valuable, and I can see this being effective at as little as 3 supports on the table, which are those 3 that we talked about: Helicarrier, Government Liaison, and the Sky Destroyer. That's without even considering any of her cards or any of the other cards that we're going to be bringing to the table. We're basically going to start with 1 because of our alter ego ability. We're going to go grab one of those shield supports. Still not 100% sure which shield support I am going to be grabbing with that ability on turn 1. But you could potentially even have more in your opening hand if as you're mulliganing. If you have a couple field agents, you're going to use that ability to go get a government liaison. You can build to 3 supports really quickly, and then this card becomes something that is going to help you build by managing threat and or minions. So it's kind of interesting. It's going to be fun to determine when we want to be playing this, when it's going to be effective, or when it's going to be better to build versus playing this card. 2 cost is a little bit expensive, and by the time we get to that efficiency curve, or to that efficiency, if we're running like all of our giant helicarriers that we've seen, are we just in a win more scenario? I don't know. Those helicarriers provide incredible benefits, right? So you're going to play allies for free. You're dealing 5 damage with the Iliad. And you're able to manipulate your counters to just kind of continuously roll those out using Maria's ability. So if we're playing all points bulletin, are we just winning more because we already have those helicarriers out? Or are we going to be looking at strategies where we're going to be trying to put out lower cost, not those 6 cost helicarriers, but maybe like 3 or lower cost shield supports onto the table, and then exploit all points bulletin to kind of do a ton of damage? I don't know. It's going to be kind of fun, and Maria is one of the characters that I am so excited to get to the table because I don't really know. I don't exactly know how she's going to play until I'm going to sit down and play it. And so I am very excited. I think that this will be a uber flexible card, which is something that we do really like in true solo. And once we are able to trigger to an effect, I'm not going to do it with 1 shield support on the table, but if I have 3 or 4, that's going to be great. So I am really excited for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm excited to try and optimize this. I see that there is no upper limit on this card, and so I do want to try and break it at some point, because if we have 20 shield supports on the table, that's 20 damage. That's a lot of damage. And so my mind just starts to spin with all the possibilities of where in my build ramp that I want to be playing this, and then also on the other hand, where can I break it? How can I get so many shield supports on the table that this card becomes uber efficient, where I'm paying 3 effective cost for 10 damage. That's awesome. So let me know what you think about these two new cards down in the comments. I am excited to talk and theorize on how we can play around with these two cards when we get the cards next month in February. Thank you so very much for hanging out. I appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next time. Peace.